Hello Year 12. This screencast is going to be focusing on Chapter 5 of The Complete Mouse, and that's Chapter 5 of Part 1, and we'll be starting with mouse holes. The first thing I wanted to note here was the importance of telling stories. Art is retelling Vladek's story, and telling stories is a way of putting order in a space of disorder, and it's about organizing Vladek's experiences in a way that Artie can understand and make sense of or meaning of, and try to figure out if he can ever understand his father or who he is today because of what's happened to him. But he can only kind of hint at that. He can never really know what it means to have survived the Holocaust because it's not something he experienced himself. But that is why he tells the story in chronological order rather than the way that Vladek jumps all over the place when he tells the story. All right, now I'm just going to be looking at my book while I'm discussing what annotations I've made, so just go with me on this. Now, you will be looking at page 97 and moving on to page 98 in your novel. Okay, the first thing I noticed is we're just touching back again on this fractured relationship between Art and Vladek here. So Vladek rings up and he claims to be in all sorts of a state, and he needs Artie to come and help him. But of course, Artie takes his time, as we see on the next page, and it's a week later by the time he decides to go and visit his father. But what you do notice on this next page here, or what stood out to me, is this idea of the Holocaust being the yardstick by which Vladek measures any experience. And it means, therefore, that Artie can never live up to that. He can never, his pain can never really compare, or his issues can never compare to what Vladek survived. And that forever means that they've got that fractured relationship because they feel like they're in competition with each other. He's talking here to his wife about how his father has belittled him and made him feel kind of small and worthless, like he's in competition with him. And that's why he became an artist, because that was one way he would never have to compete with his father, he felt. And that was his kind of rationale, for doing what he does, but also almost a bit of rebellion. And that's why he went into the field that he went into. And here we've got the bleed out of the panel, might be just to show you the tone of sarcasm there. All right, turning over, we see, yes, Artie hasn't arrived for another week to help his father with I think it was the roof. Is that what he wanted fixed? Yeah, the roof. And Art's delay suggests the kind of relationship. The going to fix the roof means nothing for Art. He doesn't get anything out of it. And possibly that's why he didn't go for such a long time. He didn't come for a week to help his father out. He was in no hurry because it wasn't of any benefit for him. And we see that, Vladek's quite annoyed at him. Is he trying to guilt him? We've got the bolding of the text here. Can't be everything, okay? And that face looks a bit downtrodden, a bit sad, like he knows he's in the wrong. And then we're moving into the next page, and we're looking at Marla is revealing to Artie that Vladek has in fact seen a comic that he wrote when he was younger called Prisoner of Hell Planet, and that's what's upset him. That's why he's more angry than what Artie might have predicted, because he didn't turn up to fix the roof. He's angry about what he's seen in this comic. And she knows, and she's known about it for a long time, but she never thought that he would have read it. So then we're turning into Prisoner of Hell Planet. I would suggest that this is a set of panels that you look at extremely carefully. This would be mentioned in just about every essay on mouse. This is a case history, which means it's one example of, and Art's story is the example. And here's a case history for second-generation survivors and what it's like for them to experience life as survivors of Holocaust, or as children, sorry, of Holocaust survivors. And we've got this image here, which is one rare photograph included within the whole comic, and it's the second one of 3, I think. It's floating above the text just to make it stand out. Within his hand here, he's grasping onto it. And as you can see, there's a lot going on. I'm not going to go through everything here. I'm sure you'll go through it in your own classes, and if you just look at it carefully yourself, a lot will stand out to you. But you've got Artie, who feels like he's a prisoner because of what his mother has done to him, and what his mother has done is committed suicide because she was obviously very mentally unwell and struggled to cope with that, and he feels extreme guilt because the last time that she spoke to him, she asked, did he love her? And he just didn't reply. He was kind of your rebellious teenager in his lack of reply. And this has, in many ways, he believes ruined him and has really affected who he is. So let's go back. So we see this is a dramatic shift in the kind of drawing and in even the tone of the images. It's gotten from the traditional comic book style to what you might refer to as Expressionism. So you could Google that term and see what you can learn about it. And it reflects, particularly this image here, it reflects an artist known as Edvard Munch, and it's spelled Edvardmunch, and his painting is called Scream, and it's very much like that. And you might wonder what kind of mood or effect is art going for or trying to present with this image. The angles, the lines, the way the images are drawn, maybe they represent the distorted mental state that Art is in and how he feels after his mother has killed herself, and the fear that that's brought up in this memory and even in this experience of her taking her own life. And it's placed almost in the center of this book, and almost that's the center of Art's life, the fact that the center of Art's horror, the fact that his mother took her own life and that he has had to live with the consequences of that every day since. And he feels as if mentally he has been murdered by his mother because her suicide destroyed him, took him to a new level of kind of helplessness, and left him alone to kind of deal with his father, which he wasn't able to do. You've got this panel here, he's grappling with who to blame. You've got the mother in the bath after she's committed suicide. We've got menopausal depression. It's Hitler's fault, him asking mummy. You've got the reference to her number at Auschwitz. You've got the blades, which is people cutting themselves to inflict harm, potentially to commit suicide. You've got the bodies of the Jews and the Gypsies and the Roma who were killed by the Nazis. You've got him as a young child being read to by his mother. There's so much in these images. Just really take the time to sit and absorb these and think about what is Art's state of mind, what is he trying to say, what emotions are being brought forward through these pictures, and how does that then contribute to the wider novel, The Complete Mouse? How does it help you to better understand Art and the way he tells his story, or the way he tells Vladek's story? All right, and then we're moving on, and we're on page 106 for you guys. And we step back out of the comic and we're back into the normal graphic novel setting, or drawing if you'd like. And we talk about, Marla mentions that she thinks the story is very accurate, very objective, what Artie has written about his experience of Marla's death and how it was dealt with. And she's trying to reassure him that he hasn't portrayed it in a way that is false or inaccurate or unjustified, but that she does in fact think it was accurate. But she notes that it is quite personal, and this shocks her. You can see that by the look on her face. And it's probably a bit confronting for her, being the second wife, followed Anya, to read that and know what the experience was like. And we've got here Art notes that he doesn't even look at my work when I stick it under his nose. And Marla says this isn't like any other comic. And so you see, this is sort of the one time that Vladek engages with any of Art's work, and that is quite sad because of what it is, but it also reflects the fractured relationship they have, that maybe Vladek doesn't value comics and that as a career path, and therefore that's why he hasn't really engaged with it up until now. All right, and you've got Art apologising for what's happened, and Vladek saying, but it brought up the memories, the bolding of that word there to show kind of the pain that the reading of that comic brought to him. Okay, and then we're moving on, and he's getting angry again. You can tell simply by just looking here, and Marla's had enough of him. And you've got Artie again. He wants something. He wants his mother's diaries. And Vladek says, well, they haven't shown up. And he says, I've got to have them. But still, to no avail, they have not appeared. And they're walking down the bottom here. We've got them walking back through history because we're about to step back into Vladek's story, out of the story of father and son and into Vladek's story of surviving the Holocaust. So we continue to walk through history here. All right, and we've got them, they've moved into the ghettos, and the guards really stand out. They're very clearly drawn. You can see the swastika, which shows that the German is in charge, but then we've got the Jews as guards here who stand out. But the prisoners in the back, they are kind of faceless. They could be anyone, representative of possibly the millions of faceless victims who died, innocent people who may, whose lives were lost. And, there are 6 million Jews are claimed to have died in the Holocaust, and yet, we can't possibly remember each story. Every person can't remember each story meaningfully. It's impossible, so it becomes kind of this blended group. But it might also highlight the chaos of the ghetto and what it was like being in there. All right, and then you've got this realization over here, and we said, I can manage papers to take Wolf, Tosha, and Bibi, and maybe little Lernia and Rishu if you'll let me. Yes, they'd be better off. You see, I wanted to send Rishu someplace safe a year ago, but things are even worse, Vladek, and we have no choice. So they've decided now they need to send their son Rishu away because they can't protect him where they are, but they can get papers and get him out with the family friend Tosha. So off he goes. The papers are arranged, and he came again to Srajula. Off they went. Da, 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 da. It was the last time we ever saw them, but that we couldn't know. So this, in the same way, is quite like when Elie Wiesel says 8 words spoken simply, and it was the last moment he saw his mother, but he didn't know that. It's only with hindsight that you know this fact that we couldn't know, that this was the last time he would see his baby boy. And you can see these very simple words conveying so much pain, sadness trapped behind the barbed wire fence within the ghetto, and having to say goodbye to their son. You've got to consider the very deep emotions that would be troubling these individuals in having to give away their son and leave them in the care of somebody else. And this is particularly important considering what's about to happen in the novel. When things came worse in our ghetto, we said always, thank God the kids are with Persis safe. And this was particularly important because they saw, children being smashed against brick walls and being killed. And we've got this overlay of telling the story of Vladek, telling the story to Artie. This I didn't see with my own eyes, but somebody the next day told me, and I said, thank God with Perseus, our children are safe. However, what he didn't know, and what he was to later learn, was that where Tosha and the children were was about to be taken by the Gestapo, and they were to be taken then, Tosha and the children, to Auschwitz. And she said, no, I won't go to their gas chambers, and my children won't go to their gas chambers. So we've got this close up, closer and closer with each panel, And you can see her sweating and probably beginning to deteriorate here after she's taken a substance. So what she's done is she's poisoned herself and the children to ensure that they didn't have to suffer at the camps, and that it would be a quick end on their terms rather than on the terms of the Nazis. And that's a particularly tragic moment for Vladek, and maybe that leads you to have some sympathy for him and the experiences that he's gone through and what it's taken for him to survive, considering that, you know, his young son was taken. All right, let's keep going. Now we've got the overlay here, and my comment about this was, by repeatedly highlighting his resourcefulness and survival skills, Vladek emerges, if not as a hero, then a man of a highly developed practical intelligence. Vladek authenticates his narrative with blueprints for the enlightenment and instruction of his listeners. So he includes these blueprints of things like bunkers and other hiding places and camps and things like that. He draws these little maps as a way to substantiate the things that he's saying and prove that he has done, he has been there, he has experienced this, and that helps to kind of solidify his story. And maybe it's his way of kind of communicating with Artie the only time he comes to his level of drawing, so that they can share in that experience, the image. Right, and then we are back in, and this is quite a different panel. It's a very large one, and you can see it's a side cut view because you're looking into the house, and you can see the bunker underneath with the dogs. Quite vicious. Think about the shading, the colouring, the look on their faces, etc. And again, we've got an overlay of the image. It links to this same point we've made over here. And then this panel is quite a lot darker than all the other panels on this page. And it says, by the end of July, the Nazis made to liquidate completely our ghetto. It was 10,000 Jews taken away in 1 week. Except to sneak for food, we stayed mostly in the bunker. So possibly this looks like blood glistening in the kind of light, and he's maybe been shot. And the fear and the experience of what it was like to hide and only just to sneak out for food to survive, but otherwise just to be in hiding like a mouse, like vermin, that the Jews believe them, the Nazis believe them to be. All right, and we're moving on. This is page 115 in my book. And we've got Jewish rat is what that means. Rouse, like mouse, means mice. Mouse means mouse, but Jewish rat is what he's calling him. And one of them has ratted on as such, or told where these people are. And so they then have been found, Vladek and his fellow hiding out buddies, and they've been taken away. Because they had created for themselves a ghetto inside a ghetto, and there we had to sit and wait. They were in a prison, locked up within the ghetto, so like a prison within the ghetto, which you can imagine the circumstances. They were already on very poor rations, etc. To be moved into a prison within the ghetto was awful. The focal point of this spread is the selling of valuables to survive. There's nothing more that you can do. You just have to collect up their goods and try to get rid of them for money. But we see that wouldn't they have helped you even if you couldn't pay? I mean, you were from the same family, because he's talking about his family member taking his money. Ha, you don't understand. At that time, it wasn't any more families. It was everybody to take care for himself. And we've got the emphasis with the bolding, the facial expressions. And this links back to, if you go right back to the prologue, the spread in which Vladek makes a comment about Artie's friends abandoning him because he's fallen off his skateboard, sorry, and how friends wait until they're all locked up in a room together for a week, then see who's your friend. And it just points to the mentality of the Holocaust, where everybody was for himself. And possibly that's why Vladek is the way he is today. He just looks out for number one, and everybody after this experience, it has to benefit him in some way. That relationship has to be meaningful for him. Otherwise, it's not worth it. And scrolling on down, you've got this, the transition with the spotlight here, or the insert of sorts, and the transfer of the ring to protect himself. So he's always very clever with his money, belongings, and whatever things he has to help him, he's able to use very well. He's a resourceful individual. But we see down the bottom, Haskell took from me father-in-law's jewels, but finally he didn't help them. He was a millionaire, but even this didn't save his life. So you can see his kind of deep sadness. We've got another open mouth panel. On Wednesday, the van came. Anya and I saw her father at the window. He was tearing his hair and crying. And so nobody, didn't matter how wealthy you were, you weren't able to escape the Nazis. All right, and we'll skip through a few panels. You can look at these as you like. All right, now this is page 124 for me. This set of panels here, quite important, and I would suggest that you want to have a very careful look at this. Always Lalok was a little Meshuggah. I'm a skilled worker. Wherever they take me, I'll be okay. You're crazy. You're going straight to the ovens. And he did get put into one of the next transports to Auschwitz. Anya became completely hysterical. The whole family is gone. Grandma and Grandpa, Papa, Mama, Tosha, Bibi, my Rishu. Now they'll take Lolek. It was also around this time that we heard first from the bad news from Zawisirk and Tosha about Tosha and Rishu. Oh my God, let me die too. Come, Anya, get up. Why are you pulling me, Vladek? Let me alone. I don't want to live. So the open mouth, the lack of the eyes in any of these images, it's just her absolute pain and agony in having survived and her son having died. And then this moment where Vladek says, no, darling, to die, it's easy, but you have to struggle for life. Until the last moment, we must struggle together. I need you. But you'll see that together we'll survive. This I always told her. And this strikes me as a particularly important moment for Vladek, because you see his deep love for Anya, and the way that he treats her is quite different to the way that he treats Artie or Marla or anybody today, and it shows kind of a different person to who he's become. This loving and thoughtful man who cares deeply and is trying very hard to help his wife get through something that is soul-destroying for any parent, I imagine. All right, so we've got the larger panel there. You might want to think about why that's a larger panel. And you've got the narration outside, etc. We've got the onomatopoeia with the letters there, and you might want to have a little think on that. And this, I only ran very fast back to our bunker. Always about survival. We've got the introduction to the dog, which is the Americans. And this here is an image of a swastika-like path laid out in the ground, and showing how the Nazism kind of stretches out in every direction. It's inescapable. You can never get away from them if you live in one of these European countries that surround Germany and who are under attack, and whose way of life is under attack by the Nazis. All right, and we'll carry on a little bit more. towards, and this is the end of the chapter, and we've got Artie and Vladek back out of the story. They're in their own present day as such narrative, and we've got Vladek getting angry again because he's saying that Marla's trying to steal all his money, and it's just great sadness, and he's, oh, Anya, 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 easy pop, let's go home. Artie doesn't really know how to deal with this. He's just trying his best. But you've got Vladek who, it's never really pointed out whether his concerns about Anya and whether she was really trying to take his money are justified. This just seems to be an ongoing point in the back of the book, that Marla is kind of a less than, in many ways, Anya. All right, I'll wrap this one up and then I'll have a crack at chapter 6.